You've heard me talk about it. Independent artists trying to get on the radio. It's never going to happen. Today, we are talking with one of the best people in the radio business, my buddy Kenny Wall from Partnered Programming. We're going to talk about why independent artists can't get on the radio. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Steve Freeman Podcast, the real, raw truth about the pursuit of success in music, business, and life. Here's your host, hit songwriter, multi-platinum selling producer, and serial entrepreneur, Steve Freeman.
Welcome back to another episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast. So good to have you here. While you're here, don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you rate us 5 stars, leave a written review, and you just might be featured on an upcoming episode of the podcast with your review. So leave one. Make sure you are following me everywhere on social media at The Steve Freeman. I would also love to have you a member of my inner circle. TheSteveFreeman.com is the place to go get signed up to get tips, tricks, advice, and opinion delivered straight to your email inbox once a week, maybe a couple times a month. I'm not going to bug you too much, but go check it out. Become a member of my inner circle at TheSteveFreeman.com. And as always, the podcast brought to you by ArtistDevelopmentAcademy.com for all of you independent artists, songwriters, producers. You want to take your career to the next level. I have assembled a group of music industry professionals, hit songwriters, platinum selling producers, label executives, publishing company executives, everybody that you need to know from the inside to teach you exactly the tools that you need to make it to the next level. We've got an entire library of online courses for you to take to monetize your music, write better songs, develop your career, grow a fan base. It's all waiting there for you with brand new online courses added every single month. And you get access to our members-only live stream, members-only blog, and webinars to where we can connect one-on-one with you. The answer to taking your career to the next level is at ArtistDevelopmentAcademy.com. All right, I am so looking forward to having my buddy Kenny Wall on with us today on the podcast because I've talked about this in so many different videos, so many different podcasts, because I always get independent artists talk to me about radio. They want to get on the radio. They think being on the radio is the key to becoming a star, being successful, being famous, all of that. And I keep telling you guys, as independent artists not signed to a major label, you're never going to make it on the radio. You're never going to make it on the radio stations that matter. The Music Row charts, the small markets, even though it's great to have your song spinning on those stations, it means absolutely nothing, and it's not going to help your career at all. But instead of me going on and on talking about it, I want to introduce you to my friend, Kenny Wall. Kenny has been a program director for Clear Channel, Cumulus, all the way over into Australia. He has worked for everyone at some of the top radio stations in the country, programming those stations. I'm going to let him tell you why you're never going to make it on the radio. So it's not just coming from me, it's coming from him. So with no further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome in my friend for over 30 years, Kenny Wall. And this is going to blow your mind, Kenny. We have been friends for 30 years. Now, let that sink in for just a second and let you feel nice and young. But I first met Ken when I was 13 years old, and I'm 43 now. So the math on that does make it 30 years. He was my first program director that I worked for in radio at the Maverick, KMVK in Little Rock. And he has been all over the world. You can't even say the United States. He's been over radio stations in Australia and networks, and he's programmed some of your favorite radio stations in cities all over the United States. He now owns a programming consulting business that helps program directors decide how to make their radio stations sound better, from voice tracking all the way through to actually consulting on the type of programming that radio stations need to have. Why I wanted to have Kenny on today was to talk to the artists about radio. You hear me say it all the time, don't waste your money as a part of your marketing strategy to try to get on radio, whether it's small market radio, which doesn't matter, your Music Row charts, your all of those, they don't matter. Even if you did get a number one on those charts, it doesn't matter. That still doesn't mean anybody's hearing your record. To the medium market stations, to especially the large and major market stations, because of consultants and all of that, where I want to start is a basic understanding, Kenny. Why can't independent artists get on radio?
Well, follow me on this because it's kind of weird. The reason why is debt of the radio station. They overextended themselves so much that when a radio station, program director Kenny Wall, Little Rock, Arkansas, why did his ratings go down 0.75 of a point? That's affecting my revenue. So the regional sales guy talks to my GM, and he also talks to my regional programmer. Why is this down? Well, I don't know. I'll look at his stuff. And they will determine every time that it's because I'm playing unfamiliar music. And so we got to cut that. You play nothing but the hits, in hopes that the ratings will grow and they'll be able to pay off this debt that the radio stations owe. It would be really easy to kind of take a dump on the program directors, but by and large, those guys, they want to play new music. They enjoy the music, but it ain't going to happen. Not in these days. And like you say, small market radio doesn't matter. You need to focus solely on social media and YouTube and videos, and because that is how people are discovering music right now. Get on Pandora, get on Spotify if you can, but that's the way people are discovering music now. A little bit during the radio with the radio, but mostly it's done through social media and on-demand listening.
I totally understand what you're saying. Here's what I want to talk to you about. Is not a lot of that just complete bullshit? Like they think that if program directors think that major label artists keep people listening, where does the public really care if you played a new unknown artist? Do they really care, or is that this thing that we've drummed up because of the sales, because of the debt of the radio stations, thinking that if we only play A-list artists, then more people are going to listen for longer? Or does the public really even care, or are the corporately owned radio stations trying to control the environment by saying that's the reason?
Yes and yes. Every quarter hour is so important. And getting back to only playing the stars from the major labels, the listeners, one of the biggest complaints you'll get from a listener these days is they play the same songs over and over and over. We don't hear anything new. We hear the same new songs, and the listeners care. They want to hear your music. The programmers, or should I say, the programming as a big unit is they're not interested in doing anything that will cost them their job. And these days it will. It
most certainly will. And I think a lot of these artists, they don't understand that. The one thing that I do want to talk to you about, and because I know you'll understand this, because I owned a record label for many years. And one of the things that we got calls, emails, any way that they could reach out to us was when we had a new artist, their record had gone out to radio. And this was, 10 years ago, and it was still viable to take small and medium market radio airplay and turn it into physical dollars via shows, especially when we had a great program director to work with in markets like Alexandria, Louisiana, Huntsville, Alabama. Mm-hmm. We had great PDs that understood the locality and localness of radio. So that still worked back then. So we would put out a record, and of course we would have our artist, hey, let all your fans know the records that, at the radio station. Well, then we would get tons of phone calls from all of these fans. Well, we called them. They said they don't have it. And that was what always bugged me, was that it always looked bad on the artist and it looked bad on the record label, because the program directors and or the on-air personality would not just be honest with the listener and go, we've got it, but I'm sorry, due to our corporate playlist rules and our consultant or whoever, we're not allowed to play it. Instead, it always got put back on the artist, which then's calling their record label going, man, I got 300 fans calling me and saying that their radio station doesn't even have the record. And it's like, why is that? Why was that always? Because I remember specifically many times you having a conversation with me when I worked for you as on-air talent, and you always said, don't ever tell them we don't have it. be honest with them and tell them that we are not allowed to play it, or let me check with my program director and see if we have it, and if so, can we play it? Why lie to listeners?
I don't know, because I personally think that listeners can see through a lot of that bullshit, to be honest with you. I mean, what happens is, especially when somebody really befriends a program director, and then you start peeking behind the curtain and seeing all the dirty little secrets that's behind it. When, let's face it, when a package comes in, or of course, this is back when you had CDs, they look at the label, and if it says Big Machine or whatever that label is, or if it says Kenny Wall Records, the Kenny Wall Records is going into the pile, the back behind his desk that gets higher and higher and higher. And that's just the way it is. And at the same point in time, if they took the time to listen, then they'd want to play it. Because a good song is a good song is a good song, but it's just it's futile.
Well, I remember back in the day in the studio in the Maverick, I remember you would always program the playlist. You would always upload the playlist into the system. And then we always had a stack of 4 or 5 CDs that were new records that you were testing. And you said, I'm going to put them right over here. If you get a request for those and you're running short in an hour or whatever, that's the pile. But don't just play them. It needs to be listener interactive. It needs to be, we're trying to see if these records are going to, take, hold in the marketplace if there's an interest, and you can play those. And the only time you ever got mad at me, I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was about 11:45 at night. And there was a new covers album that had come in, and Alan Jackson had recorded Don't Close Your Eyes. And I was running a little short on an hour one time, and I thought, ooh, I'm going to play that. And honestly, in my mind, I was like, Ken's not listening. I mean, it's almost midnight. I had barely got into the opening lick of that song, and the hotline rang, and it's you going, what are you playing? And why are you playing that? That's not on the list. And I didn't understand that at the time. Now, later, as I became a program director, I understood it very well and what the system was. And I don't think a lot of artists truly understand that there is a human connection between them and their music and the program director, but they have a fundamental misunderstanding that a lot of times that relationship, although you want to build it, doesn't really matter now because of the consultants. Talk about being with Clear Channel and talk about being with Cumulus. I mean, do you feel like the consultants and the corporate mentality of it stripped away the true meaning and definition of even being a program director at a station now?
Oh, absolutely. Used to, a PD was in charge of his promotions. He was in charge of the music. He was in charge of the staff. He was in charge of all these things. And little by little, that's been stripped away. And I will say this, working for Cumulus this past time, it wasn't that bad. They did allow me to kind of do a little bit of my own thing. But if it didn't work, that's when they dropped the hammer and say, no, you're going to do this. And so I got to give Charlie Cook from Cumulus Media, I'll give him props for that. But that's the exception, not the norm. When I was at Clear Channel, or iHeart or whatever you want to call it, it was a hierarchy, and it's the typical. Here it is. In Office Space, have you been working on those TPS reports? And then the next guy comes in. Hey, I heard you're not working on your TPS reports. And it goes on and on. All these layers come down on you at one time. And after a while, you just succumb to the pressure, and they beat you over the head enough, and they get you in line. And then after that, it's like, yes, sir. And that's it.
Well, to me, it's like when I don't even know why artists, I understand why they want to be on the radio. They think it's the key to fame. And because they're so focused on being famous and not successful. And the short route to that, is have a hit on the radio. And I tell people all the time, especially artists and songwriters, a hit was never written in the room. A hit is made when a record label puts $1 million in promotion behind it. That's what makes a hit song a hit song. And if you've got the money to promote your music, then you could put it in a lot of other areas that are going to go a lot further than trying to get program directors to play your record who cannot play it anyway, no matter, even if they loved it, liked it, they can't help you.
That is absolutely spot on.
Well, what do you think? I don't even listen to the radio anymore. I just can't, for the main reason that you just said a second ago. It's the same artists over and over. I mean, to me, Cumulus maybe not as bad, but certainly Clear Channel / iHeart Radio. It's almost like a satellite network. You just go from city to town, and whatever Clear Channel station's in there, you're hearing Bobby Bones in the morning, and it's the same people over and over and over and over again. And I remember, man, 1992, radio was fun. You know, we had crosstown competitors, and we had a local owner that was like, this was war. I mean, put on war paint. I remember you used to do stingers and jingles and stuff against K-Duck, where the station in Little Rock at the time was K-Duck. And we would have liners on the Maverick where it would make like sounds like ducks were taking off and shotguns were blowing off and blowing the ducks out of the air. You know, we used to have fun. And that really encouraged a creative environment that did foster new talent and new artists, major label or not, because even back then, it was just as tough for a new major label artist to get that airtime as it was the established artist at the time.
You know, you're talking about how everything sounds. What really brought that to my attention was I drove from Little Rock to Fort Walton or Pensacola Beach one day. I got out of the range of my local station, so I picked up a station out of Jackson, Mississippi. They were playing the same list an hour later. I went a little further. I got closer to Pensacola. I tuned in the Pensacola station. They were playing the same list in order because I pay attention to stuff like that. And at that very moment, I got home and said, or I got to the beach and I said, I'm gone. I'm going to go get me a satellite radio right now. And I did. And that's when I knew radio was in trouble.
Well, to be real honest with you, I think it's getting to the point where satellite is the highway. It's the same thing. It's this. I think they have a playlist maybe of 43 songs, and it's the same ones over and over and over and over. Matter of fact, I did this not like you did, but I tested this out for 4 days where I went specifically to get my coffee at the exact same time every morning, and I left it on the highway. Same song playing at 9:13 for 4 or 5 days solid. The exact same song. And that's not good for the listener. How do they not know that? Smelly cat.
Yep. They do. And
why do they not care?
One of the things they do care and they know what's happening and it bothers them, but they don't think there's anything they could do about it. And the thing that you could do about it is pop in your favorite iPod song or listen to me iPod, pop in something you want to listen to and listen to it, because that's shoddy programming. You are supposed to know about that. You're supposed to keep up with that. When you edit a music log, there's a grid and it shows you the star where that song played the previous day. You don't want it to do that. So you make it to where it doesn't do that. And I think it's shoddy programming in that respect. And it's sad, but that's one of the reasons why it's dying.
It really is. You can't, it's very hard now to log on to any trade magazines whatsoever and not see that they're all going bankrupt. And I guess what I've never understood,
all of them,
every single one of them, what I don't understand is why to me, it's very simple to me. The less local they became, the more bankrupt they go. The less they listen to and I tell artists this all the time and the public, and they don't understand it. They don't get it and they don't believe it. There's been a great wool pulled over the public's eyes when it comes to radio because they don't want to hear from you. They put out a request line number. The last thing in the world that on-air disc jockey wants is for you to fucking call that number and tell them what you want to hear, because they don't care.
That's right. That's why they push the button that makes them all busy. That way you can never get in. And that's, I'm guilty of doing that sometimes. But, if I was in a particularly shitty mood, I didn't want to talk to anybody, I'd put them on busy. Otherwise, I liked hearing from the listeners.
Well, I remember the days when it was literally the lifeblood of the station. I mean, we got contesting ideas. We got promotional ideas. We didn't necessarily have to come up with all this inside cool stuff. By communicating with our listeners and having regular people that called into your show, my show, Ed's show, Chad's show, everybody had their own little thing. And it really was a community. It was like a very large family, a very large and loyal family that we don't have that anymore. And now it's just like, okay, little kids, it's almost like a baby in a high chair. The listeners, okay, sit in here, and we're going to spoon feed you and don't talk. We don't want to hear from you. And I guess I don't understand as somebody, I mean, you're still in it. And it's like, how in the world can we get the powers that be to see that going back local is the key to all of this? It's the key to local artists. It's the key to independent artists. It's the key to creating a relationship with your fan base, with your listeners especially. Why? What do we have to do to get them to see that and acknowledge that is the reason they're going bankrupt?
Well, it's going to happen. And here's why. You're right. They're bankrupt. They're going to start selling off stations at bargain basement prices, and local owners who regret, and they do regret, getting out of the ownership, particularly in markets like Lexington, Kentucky, Huntsville, Alabama. They're going to get back in it. They're going to buy it, and they're going to do radio like they did it. And that's how it's going to happen. When will that happen? I don't know, but it's going to happen. You can bet on it.
I think it's, especially with what's happened with the coronavirus now, I think this is going to be Clear Channel. They'll always be Clear Channel to me. I don't care what they call themselves.
Right.
But I think a lot, Cumulus, CBS, I think a lot of them are going to use what's happening right now to actually get all the way out of the business and start selling off these stations.
Oh, they will. And they're going to have to. And the thing that is getting me now, the fire sale is on high profile talent. Just in the past 2 days, a major morning show named Brooke and Jubal. Well, Jubal is no longer with him. They also had the Kane show that was on iHeart. They got rid of Kane, and they're paring it down, and it's going to be basically Pandora on a tower.
That's, and I mean, it's just simply from the standpoint of cutting, it's economics. It's just cutting it's all $120,000 salary that goes straight to the bottom line.
Yes, it's all about the money. It's all about the debt.
Well, the only way they're going to be able to get out from underneath it is to start selling stations. And
that's exactly right.
And unfortunately, that's going to cause another problem, because a lot of local owners now assuming that debt, taking on the radio stations, they're not going to be able to afford high dollar talent. That was also the other problem back 25 years ago, was that the radio business was fun. And that's what you had to sell potential employees on, was this is a radio business. We have fun, because none of us were making any money, and then it started to get bigger and bigger, and there was money to be made. If it goes back to that direction, then there won't be that. They won't have that much. It will be hiring local talent again, and which could be good, but it's not going to be good for the morning show in a medium market that is demanding a hefty salary at the moment.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem, and I think there still will be a syndication morning show type situation. There always has been, practically.
Right.
And so I think that's going to remain. I think what's going to end up happening is it's going to be a slow rebuild. The first thing they'll do after they buy back their station is first thing they're going to do is find people that want to work. And that's a big thing. People who want to work. And I got to where I didn't want to work anymore. I hated it. I've been unhappy in radio since 2011, and it finally took my dad passing away to realize I hate it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I quit. and moved back to home to Plummerville, Arkansas, right here. Why? Because radio wasn't fun anymore. And part of the reason why it's not fun anymore is you don't get to play new songs and new artists and do these crazy promotions. And, I remember I've done promotions. There was a guy in Lexington who came up to Lexington. His name was Lucas Hogue. Great guy. I liked his music. Couldn't play it, but we did a show with him. 4 people showed up. Why? Because we couldn't play his music. And I'll kind of loop back around and say, and one of the things he's done is he got in with Bash Pro Shops. He's like their official spokes band person. And so he makes plenty of money just going around and playing parking lots of Bash Pro Shops at these events. And so there are ways to make money with your touring if you can get lucky like that. But I wished I could have played him. I really do. I really liked him. And same thing. There was a girl, I don't remember her name, but same thing. It was like I couldn't play all these exciting new artists who had great songs. And I'll tell you something else. You can't play a Reba McEntire song anymore. You can't play an Alan Jackson song. I'm talking about new music. Brooks and Dunn. They're gone. They're in the corporate radio's eyes. Those people died back in 1996. And it's true. And I feel bad for taking a dump on radio stations because it provided me a good living for a long time. But when I see bullshit, I like to call bullshit. And this is bullshit.
Is there anything that anybody can do? Because you say, you want to put out that, support your local radio station, except it's not your local radio station anymore. Not anymore. And it leaves you almost with that's why I just tell it is the toughest part of my job when I'm working with a new artist is to somehow get radio out of their mind, because that's what they're even when we're in the studio and I'm producing a record, their management will come in or somebody will come in, somebody from the label will come in, and everything that we're talking about in relation to the record we're cutting at the moment is all about radio. Oh, well, let's cut 4 bars out of that intro because, radio's not going to play it if it's got, too short of an intro because they like to talk. And all I do is sit there and go, they're not going to play it anyway. So why don't we have a good record from an integrity standpoint? And all of their conversations revolve around honestly thinking and believing that if it's good enough, it's going to get on the air. Yeah, I wished I had better news, but it's not. And you like you say, your best is to spend your money elsewhere. Don't. Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on, because I wanted to talk with you about it, because it is the thing of an artist. Everybody dreams of driving down the road in their hometown and hearing their song on. I will admit, it's been, 15 years ago or so, but I've experienced that. I'll never forget. I was leaving Nashville. I don't remember. I was going back to Arkansas for something. I don't remember. And I knew that when I crossed right over the bridge, it wasn't very far into West Memphis, you could start picking up Kissin' again. And I remember I turned 95.7 right as I was coming over, and one song was ending, and it was the first time that I had ever heard a song that I had written playing on Kissin'. And I remember that feeling. I remember what that felt like. And it's like, I want artists to be able to have that feeling and know what that feels like, because I don't care what you say. It's not the same thing hearing it on Spotify or hearing it on Apple Music. It's nowhere near that type of experience. So it sounds like the best thing we can hope for is that all of these corporately owned radio stations and companies, that they do go bankrupt and they do start selling off stations to where we can get local people involved in the decision-making process of what makes the air.
That's exactly right. And it will happen. It may not be this year. It may be 10 years, but it's going to happen. And it will go back to doing what it's supposed to be. And that's number one, serving the community.
If somebody, what is the best way if somebody wants to communicate with their local radio station? And this to me is a small and medium market thing. This is not a large or major market thing, because you're never going to communicate with them. If they still want to try to develop and build a solid relationship with a local program director in a small market or medium market? What is one of the things as a program director yourself that you always appreciated that artists did to get your attention?
I always appreciated when they came into our boardroom and played an acoustic song or two and said, look, we're playing down here at the Dewdrop Inn, and we'd love for you to come down tonight and check it out. I'll buy you a beer. And you know, the chances are they'll go and they'll have fun, and they'll say, you know what, I think we need to do a show out in the parking lot on July 4th. You know, will you be interested in doing that? And make yourself available, but don't be pushy. But just do make yourself available.
That's great. That's great. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for coming on. I wanted everybody to hear this from a professional's mouth and not mine, because I say it so often that they're like, oh, you don't know if my music's good enough, I'll get it there. Or if I hire this, $7,500 a month independent radio promoter, they can get it to happen, which that's a whole other.
That's another kettle of fish.
As a matter of fact, just really quickly on that, I mean, when you were with Cumulus and with Clear Channel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know towards the end there, and even now, isn't it corporate? They're not even supposed to talk to the independent radio promoters, right? I mean, there's in small and medium markets they can, but where the stations you really want to be on that would make a difference, they're not even communicating with those independent radio promoters.
At Cumulus, we weren't allowed to add music without telling the corporate music liaison, label liaison guy. We would have to report our ads to him. And if we ever thought, hey, they're going to come into town, I'd love to be able to give away this, then we couldn't go directly to the record company for that. We would have to go through our label liaison, and then he could work on it. And if he wanted it done, he'd get it done. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And, I had a minute ago, and because you made a great point, and I can't remember what it is, but all I can say, yourself available, don't be pushy, be nice, and play in front of as many people as you can.
Awesome. Kenny, thanks so much for being here and doing this. And we will, as all these radio stations start going bankrupt, maybe you and I get together, we'll buy up a couple of them and
I'll write a check out of petty cash.
Have some fun. I have not heard that in a long time. Man, it was great catching up with you. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
Partneredprogramming.com. If anybody wants to talk further, I'm happy to talk to them in person.
Absolutely. You can find him. That's partneredprogramming.com. You can also find him on Facebook at Partnered Programming. It's everywhere you want to find him, everywhere on social media, LinkedIn as well. And Kenny's always there to help you. Kenny, thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast. Another huge shout out and thank you going to my buddy of over 30 years, Kenny Wall, one of the best guys in radio that you will ever know. You've probably heard him on a radio station somewhere near you. He's one of my longest friends, and what a knowledgeable guy. And I appreciate him coming on and shooting you guys straight from a program director's perspective as to why they're not allowed to play your music. It's not because they don't like you and they don't like their music. They're not allowed to. And that's some very valuable information for you to carry forward. Don't forget, guys, while you're here, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Follow me everywhere on social media at The Steve Freeman. Join my inner circle at thestevefreeman.com and go over and visit artistdevelopmentacademy.com to find out how we can help you take your career to the next level. Until the next episode, guys, keep being creative, keep pressing the boundaries, and there's nothing wrong with being independent. See you in the next one.
Thanks for joining us for the Steve Freeman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow Steve on social media at The Steve Freeman.